Hi everybody, this is Bruce from the Epic Experiment. I'm back. It's time for another deck tech. Alright, so I've highlighted all sorts of decks that are sort of reasonably aggressive and doing a lot of things. This one is no different. It is a pretty aggressive build, looking to get your opponents dead pretty quickly, but it's kind of sweet in how it does. So I'm playing Rocco Street Shaft. So this is a red, green, white. So a Naya colored commander. It's a 2/4 elf druid. At the beginning of your end step, each player exiles the top card of their library. Until your next end step, each player may play the card they exiled this way. Whenever a player plays a land from exile or casts a spell from exile, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature and create a food token. So this deck looks and kind of feels like a group hug deck in that everybody's going to get a little something, some card advantage generated by Rocco, but you're going to capitalize on it far more than your opponents, and you're going to turn that into you doing gross things to your opponents. So the game plan is you're going to make lots of tokens out on the battlefield. Now you could go the route of like the Reckless Fireweavers and the tokens coming into play, or you could do some other things. But this one kind of almost feels almost stormy. We'll talk about how this one goes when it gets going here. All right, so let's talk about the ramp, because you got to get your commander on the battlefield to make use of its effects. So let's talk about it. So we got lots of different ramp targets here. As you're playing in green, you have lots of things to play with. So you've got things like Chromatic Lantern. I like Chromatic Lantern in decks with 3 or more colors because of the fact that fix your mana. So lands you control have add 1 mana of any one color, and tap add 1 mana of any color. So it's a 3 mana rock, but it fixes your mana, making sure you're going to get your stuff in. Farseek, 1 in a green, sorcery. Search your library for a plains and island, swamp, or mountain card and put it into your hand, put it into play tapped. Then shuffle. This is really good because you can go and get a something like a fetch land, a shock land, or something that's a card that's land typed. So you can go and get a couple of different choices. We have a Chromatic Orrery. This one's kind of big, 7 mana. It's a little chonky, but you're gonna probably be able to get to it. So it's a legendary artifact. You may spend mana as though it were mana of any color. So again, fixes your mana, and then tap to add 5 colorless, and then 5 and tap it, draw a card for each color among permanents you control. So you're probably going to be drawing 3 cards, which is pretty handy. All right. We've got Omen Path Journey. So this is 3 and a green for an enchantment. When Omen Path Journey enters the battlefield, search your library for up to 5 land cards that have different names, exile them, then shuffle. At the beginning of your end step, choose a card at random, exile with Omen Path Journey, and put it onto the battlefield tapped. I happen to like this effect. It plays really well with Rocco's ability of playing a land from exile. You're going to get your food token almost assuredly. Inspiring Statuary. So this is a 3 mana artifact. It says non-artifact spells you have improvise. So if you're casting a spell that isn't an artifact, they get improvise, which says your artifacts can help cast those spells. Each artifact you tap after you're done activating mana abilities pays for 1 colorless mana. So that's pretty neat. You're going to have a lot of food tokens that you can then tap to make use of to help you ramp out your spells. We have Rampant Growth. This is going to let you find a land, put it into play. We've got Faeburrow Elder. So this is 1 green white for a Treefolk Druid, Vigilance. Faeburrow Elder gets +1/+1 for each color among permanents you control. So if you have a red, a green, and a white card, this taps for 3. This already taps for 2 all of its own, but if you have a red card, now it gets for 3, which is pretty good. Thornscape Familiar. This is one of these cycles from a long ago. So 1 and a green for a 2/1 insect. Red and white spells you play cost 1 less to play, which plays really well in a deck where you're in that Naya color. Freestrider Lookout. So 2 and a green for a 3/3 creature, human rogue with reach. Whenever you commit a crime, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may put a land card from among them onto the battlefield tapped, put the rest of the bottom of your library in a random order. This ability triggers only once each turn. So if you can commit crimes, you can go and ramp and get them into the battlefield. We got a Sol Ring, super good. We have an Arcane Signet, his pal. We've got Kami of Whispered Hopes. 2 and a green for a 1/1. It's a spirit. If 1 or more +1/+1 counters would be put on a permanent you control, that many +1/+1 counters are put on the permanent instead. So you put an extra +1/+1 counter, which is great because Rocco put his extra counters on things. And then tap, add X mana of any one color where X is Kami of Whispered Hope's power. So when this gets big, it's going to tap for not just 1 mana, but 2, 3, 4, 5 mana, lots of mana. Into the north, 1 and a green for a sorcery. Search your library for a snowland card and put it on to play tapped. Then shuffle your library. Okay? We've got many partings. I like this one. Single green, search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Create a food token. That's exactly what you want to do. You want to make trinkets and junk like that. Venture forth. This was an interesting one. 3 and a green, sorcery. Exile cards to the top of your library until you exile a land card. Put that card onto the battlefield and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Exile venture forth with 3 time counters on it. And suspend 3 for 1 and a green. So, on turn 2, you can spend 1 and a green, suspend this, it goes on with 3 counters, and every turn a counter ticks off of it, which is super good if you're in turn 2 and you may not have a play. You can do this. If you have to, you just cast it, but it puts the land from exile, and then you play it, put it into play from exile, which is great with Rocco. It pays you off, and away we go. We have a Springbloom Druid, which is 2 and a green for a 1/1 elf druid. When Springbloom Druid enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice a land. If you do, search the library for up to 2 basic land cards, put them on the battlefield, tapped, and shuffle your library. I think that's great because that's a Harrow on a creature. And then we have Mana Geyser. 3 red, sorcery, add red to your mana pool for each tapped land your opponents control. As you can see, we got lots of ramp. We're going to be able to get our commander into play and make good use of them and cast them a few times. Now, let's talk about how else we're going to put things into exile. Because Rocco really pays you off when you go and put things into exile and then can you cast them again. So there's a lot of other ways to do that. So first off, we have Glimpse the Impossible. 2 and a red, sorcery. Exile the top 3 cards of your library. You may play those cards this turn. At the beginning of your next end step, if any of those cards remain exiled, put them into your graveyard, then create a 0/1 colors Eldrazi spawn creature token for each card in your you put into your graveyard. Those tokens have sacrifice this creature at 1 colorless. So you put them into exile, which Rocco loves. If you don't use them, they go in your graveyard, which is probably just fine. It leaves bodies behind the blocks. Pretty good. Aerial Extortionist. We talked about this on our podcast, but 3 white for a 4/3 flying bird soldier. Whenever Aerial Extortionist enters the battlefield or deals combat damage to a player, exile up to 1 target non-land permanent. For as long as that card remains exiled, its owner may cast it. Whenever another player casts a spell from anywhere other than their hand, you draw a card. So you can use this as like an O-ring effect on your opponent's things, or if you want to draw cards, you can exile your things, replay them and get the ETB, and then you get the draw effect. And this card is actually surprisingly good in this little build. Embrace the Unknown. 2 and a red for a sorcery. Exile the top 2 cards of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you may play those cards. It has Retrace. All right, we have Plarg and Nasari. 3 red for a 5/4 legendary creature, Orc of Freet. At the beginning of your upkeep, each player exiles cards to the top of their library until they exile a non-land card. An opponent chooses a non-land card exile this way. You may cast up to 2 spells from among the other cards exiled this way without paying their mana costs. This is gross and it can get silly, so the opponents are going to kill this fast. This is not a game changer, but it feels like if you can keep it on the battlefield, this really feels and does gross things. We have Charred Foyer and Warped Space. So this is 3 and a red for an enchantment room. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. You may play it this turn. So that half is where you're probably going to start. The other half is once each turn, you may pay 0 rather than pay the mana cost for a spell you cast from exile. Since you're going to be dabbling in the exile zone lots, that's pretty handy. Lelia, the Blade Reforged, 2 and a red. Legendary creature, Spirit Warrior with haste. It's a 2/2. Whenever Lelia, the Blade Reforged attacks, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. Whenever 1 or more cards are put into exile from your library and or your graveyard, put a Pozombos encounter on Lelia. So since you're going to be exiling lots of things with all the pile of things and your commander, Lelia is going to get really big. And this is going to be a real problem. Your opponents are going to have to answer it. Super good. Plays into your strategy exactly. Itali Primal Storm. 4 red for a 6/6 big old dino. Whenever Itali Primal Storm attacks, exile the top card of each player's library. Then you may cast any number of non-land cards exiled this way without paying their mana costs. This is music to Rocco's ears. This thing has been well documented to be a very powerful card. Usually people kill it and they don't want let you get the value of casting things for free. Visions of Phyrexia, 2 red for an enchantment. Beginning of your upkeep, Exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. At the beginning of your end step, if you didn't play a card from exile this turn, create a tapped Power Stone token. You're making Power Stone tokens sometimes with this. You're just getting access to cards. It's pretty handy. We have Durnan of the Yawning Portal. 3 and a green for a 3/3 legendary creature human warrior. Whenever Durnan attacks, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may exile a creature card from among them. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. For as long as that card remains exiled, you may cast it. That spell has Undaunted. All right, so that's pretty handy. You can go dig. Now, he's not real big as a 3/3, but you can probably find an opening somewhere. And then Pia Nalar, Consul of Revival. So she is a red and a white for a 2/3 legendary creature human artificer. Thopters you control have haste. Whenever you play a land from exile or cast a spell from exile, create a 1/1 colorless Thopter token, artifact creature token with flying. These two play together like two peas in a pod, and so Pia makes Thopters when you cast things from exile. Rocco makes them bigger. They all do the same thing, exiling things. This is like pretty much the same. Like they do the same thing, and they're from the same set. They're very, very silly. All right, so you're making lots of food tokens. You're making putting lots of +1/+1 counters on things. How are we making use of this? Well, we've got Kodama of the West Tree. So this is going to care about things that are modified. So modified creatures you control have trample, meaning if they start blocking your things that picked up counters, you're probably going to punch through. And then whenever a modified creature you control deals combat damage to a player, search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield top, then shuffle. That's really, really good. You're going to be able to trigger. If you can trigger this, thing gets crazy. Shalai and Halar. So 1 red, green, white for a 3/3 legendary creature, Angel Elf. Flying, Vigilance. Whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on a creature you control, Shalai and Halar deals that much damage to target opponent. So when Rocco starts putting counters on things, Shalai and Halar are going to start doming opponents in the face. They're going to want to kill this. The fact that it's flying and vigilance is also of significance to this because it can go on attacks and defense. This is a really good card in this, and particularly in this build, where it's going to pick up all sorts of cool counters. Knight of Sweet's Revenge, 3 and a green for an enchantment. Whenever Knight of Sweet's Revenge enters the battlefield, create a food token. Cool. Foods you control have tap to add green. Ramp, even better. And then 5 green, sacrifice Knight of Sweet's Revenge. Creatures you control get +X until end of turn, where X is the number of foods you control. Activate only as a sorcery. Well, there's an overrun effect for all those Thopter tokens or all those derpy creatures you got floating around. This is an overrun effect. Going to kill your opponents dead. Ginny Faye. Oh boy. So hybrid red, green, hybrid green, white. Elf Druid 3/3 legendary creature. If you would create 1 or more tokens, you may instead create that many 2/2 green cat creature tokens with haste, or that many 3/1 green dog creature tokens with vigilance. So at some point when Rocco, you've got enough food tokens on the battlefield, you've ramped enough, you got lots of things to do, you can start turning food tokens right into bodies on the board to go wide and overrun your opponents. Ginny Faye is also super good in this deck. Do not overlook it. Tireless Provisioner, so you play a land, you get a treasure or a food. Doesn't really matter which one you get stuff for it. Academy Manufacturer. Well, if you're going to be making foods now, it says if you make a clue, a food, or a treasure token, instead create 1 of each type. You're going to get all sorts of silly things. All right. Graham O'Brien, 1 and a green for a 2/2 legendary creature human pilot with Paradox. Whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, create a food token. Well, isn't Rocco and Graham O'Brien playing together in the same play space? Absolutely. We've got Yoshin Dissident, a green and a white for a 1/1 human artificer. Whenever an artifact you control enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Well, Rocco already wants you to put counters on things. Yoshin Dissident is doing more of it. Teething Wormlet, single green for a 1/1 worm. Teething Wormlet has a death touch as long as you control 3 or more artifacts. And then whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. If this is the first time this ability is resolved this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Teething Wormlet. So it's going to get big, it's going to gain you life, it's going to be a threat. Tough Cookie, 1 and a green, 2/2, artifact creature food golem. When Tough Cookie enters the battlefield, create a food. 2 and a green, target non-creature artifact you control becomes a 4/4 artifact creature token with until end of turn. And then 2 and a tap, sacrifice Tough Cookie, you gain 3 life. Look, I don't really want to tap it to sack it to gain life. I want that middle ability that turns all my other food tokens into 4/4. So when I've ramped and I've got the Knights of Sweet Revenge, and I just want to overrun my opponents, I can turn a bunch of them into creatures and go for it. Rosy Cotton, 2 and a white for a 1/1 legendary creature, Halfling Peasant. When Rosy Cotton of South Lane enters the battlefield, create a food token. Whenever you create a token, put a +1 encounter on target creature you control other than Rosie. So you make a food with Rocco, then puts a counter on something else. Rosie's putting counters on things. You're going to make things very big very quickly. Jaheira, Friend of the Forest, 2 and a green, 2/3, legendary creature, human elf druid. Tokens you control have tap to add green. Choose a background. So your food tokens now tap for green on 2 occasions, Knight of Sweet Revenge and Jaheira. We've got Peregrine Took. It's a 2/3 halfling citizen for 2 and a green. If one or more tokens would be created under your control, those tokens plus an additional food token are created instead. Sack 3 foods, draw a card. Yes, please. And then we have Balin, the Haymaker, red, green, white for a 4/3 legendary creature, Rabbit Warrior. Tap 2 untapped tokens you control, add 1 mana of any one color. Tap 3 untapped tokens you control, draw a card. Tap 4 untapped tokens you control, put up 3 +1 encounters on Balin, the Haymaker, against trample until end of turn. This can get out of control if your opponents are not dealing with it, so have them watch out. All right, that's our ramp, that's our payoffs. What else are we doing? Well, we've got some other big thumpers around, so let's talk about it. So Evolution Witness is protection. This has got 2 and a green for a 2/1 Elf Shaman Mutant, 1 and a green, adapt 2. Whenever 1 or more +1 encounters are put on Evolution Witness, return target permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. This is excellent, so if something dies, you want to use it again, you can just pick it up and put it back in your hand because Rocco's making counters. You're going to put counters on your things. You put them on Evolution Witness, your things don't stay dead for long. All right, we've got a Basking Broodlord, 1 and a green, Eldrazi Lizard, 2/2 with Devoid, 1 and a green, adapt 1. Whenever 1 or more +1 encounters are put on Basking Brood Scale, you may create a 0/1 creature, colorless Eldrazi Spawn creature token with sacrifice to add a colorless. So this is going to be similar to Evolution Witness. You put counters on it, you make bodies. Now you can chump, now you can block, now you can ramp, you can do all sorts of things. And Queen, 3 green for a 5/5 insect, 1 and a green, put a 1/1 green insect creature token onto the battlefield. This is just a place to dump all that mana. If you have tons of tokens with Jaheira or Knight of Sweet's Revenge is on the battlefield, you got lots of land, you can turn this into a source to dump all that land as a big old mana dump and make a million bodies to get your opponents with. And with Ginny Fae, they maybe turn into dogs or cats. You can do a lot of things with that sort of material. Scytheclaw Raptor, 2 and a red for a 4/3. Whenever a player casts a spell, if it's not their turn, Scytheclaw Raptor deals 4 damage to them. This keeps people honest. No one really wants to lose 10% of their life in a turn. So, yeah. And if they start countering a bunch of things, then they're going to take a lot of damage. We got Dromoka, Dragonlord Dromoka, 4 green, white, 5/7, legendary creature, Elder Dragon. Dragonlord Dromoka can't be countered, flying, lifelink. Opponents can't cast spells during your turn. So if you need to protect your Rocco and go for it, Dromoka is going to help you get there. Super good card. Then we've got Ghalta, Primal Hunger, 10 green for a 12/12. Elder Dinosaur, Ghalta, Primal Hunger costs X less to cast, where X is the total power among creatures you control, and it has trample. This is usually going to get cast for green, or far cheaper than 12 mana. This card is just pretty big, well documented to be a big thumper. Here's another version of Ghalta. So Ghalta and Mavrin, 3 green, white for a 12/12 with trample, dinosaur vampire. Whenever you attack, choose 1. Create a tapped and attacking XX green dinosaur creature token with trample, where X is the greatest power among other attacking creatures. And create X 1/1 white vampire creature tokens with lifelink, where X is the number of other attacking creatures. So you can either make a token that's really big, or you can go wide and make a board of blockers, whatever you need it to do. And then we have Sigarda, Font of Blessings, 2 green, white for a 4/4 legendary creature with flying. Other permanents you control have hexproof. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. Super good. And you may cast angel spells and human spells from the top of your library. I don't have a lot of angels. And the humans, I've got a few, but they're few and far between. You're playing it for the protection. What else are we using to protect our board? Well, we've got Flare of Fortitude, which is going to be a really good way to give our things indestructible. We've got a Bolt Bend to force our opponents to go and deflect something scary and go kill their own things. We can give our things hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. And of course, sometimes you need a Fog to just protect your whole board just generally. So, some good protection available to you. All right, let's talk about some ways to react to make sure you don't die. Well, Nature's Claim kills a problematic enchantment or artifact. This deck is usually going to be able to have bodies to block creatures. I'm not worried about creatures. It's other things that I have a hard time dealing with that need to be addressed. Bridgeworks Battle. So 2 and a green for target creature you control gets +2/+2 until end of turn. It fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. Perfect. It is also an MDFC, so you can play it as a land on the other side. Stomp. 1 and a red-green hybrid. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker you don't control. Well, maybe your Rocco's really big, or your Galtas, or something really big. You can get them killed. Strength of the Harvest. So this is 2 and a white and a green with enchant creature. It's an aura. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each creature and or enchantment you control. Well, when you go wide, you're going to slip this on something with probably trample, or maybe you put it on Sigarda with some flying, and you're going to probably get somebody dead. It's also an MDFC as well. The last MDFC we're running is Sundering Eruption, 2 and a red. Sorcery, destroy target land. Its controller may search their library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield, tapped, and shuffle. Creatures without flying can't block this turn. So if you're going to overrun your opponent, this is a really good card. But also, I do think it's important that we increasingly have ways to blow up problematic lands. So Sundering Eruption is great, and of course, you can flip it on the other side and play it as an MDFC, a land. We have Pick Your Poison. Single green says each opponent sacrifices an artifact, each opponent sacrifices an enchantment, or each opponent sacrifices a creature with flying. The fact that the single green sorcery speed to get rid of that sort of option is great. We have Kenra's Transformation. This is a classic one. Turn something into a 3/3 elk. And then we have Hobbit Sting, which is kind of a neat one. 1 and a white for Hobbit Sting is an instant. It deals X damage to target creature, where X the number of creatures you control plus the number of foods you control. If you've got a bunch of food, you've gone wide, this is probably killing something enormous for a mere 2 mana. The last one is a way to wipe out a bunch of artifacts, if you need to, is Rampage of the Clans. 3 and a green, instant. Destroy all artifacts and enchantments. For each permanent destroyed this way, its controller creates a 3/3 green centaur creature token. So if you need to blow up the board because your opponents have got stacks pieces and problematic enchantments that you need to kill, great, you give them some 3/3s, it's a pretty fair trade. But this could be used in a way that for you to turn all your food tokens into 3/3s and get your opponent dead. So, super good interactive spell, but could potentially be an overrun or a way to wipe the table out if you do it on the end step before you untap, and then you have an army of 3/3s that can go, you are probably going to be in good business. All right, we've got some other things that are useful and interesting here. We've got some card draw. We've got Traverse to Ulvenwald. So this is a tutor if you can meet Delirium. Otherwise, it just finds you a land. Very good card. I think it's underrated and probably worth including. Shamanic Revelation, 3 green. Draw a card for each creature you control. If I'm going to go wide, it's probably going to do well for me. You gain 4 life for each creature you control with power 4 or greater. Hopefully you can get a bunch of life off this too to help stabilize your board state. Demand answers, 1 in the red. Additional cost to cast a spell, sacrifice an artifact, or discard a card, draw 2 cards. I really like this effect when I have token artifacts around. You can sack those to get some cards. Return of the Wild Speaker and Rishkar Expertise really need no explanation. If you've seen these before, you know they're good. Just really good. I like Return of the Wild Speaker because it can also be used as an overrun if you need to, but they're both excellent cards. All right, last but not least, we've got some really cool toys. We have Hardened Scales or single green for an enchantment. Plus, if 1 or more +1/+1 counters will be put on a creature you control, then put that many +1/+1 counters, put an extra one on. All right, so if your Rocco puts counters, Hardened Scales is super good. Get it on early, get the counters on. Annie joins up. 1 red, green, white. Legendary enchantment. When Annie joins up, enters the battlefield, it deals 5 damage to target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. All right, I like that. If a triggered ability of a legendary creature triggers, you control triggers, that ability triggers an additional time. So that's like your Rosie trigger. That's the Peregrine Took trigger. That's the all these back here, all these creatures, the Galta, whatever. You have so many ways to utilize that effect. It's super, super good. And here he's resolved. So 3 white, red for an enchantment. Creatures you control get +1/+0 and have haste. Super valuable in this deck. At the beginning of your end step, exile any number of non-token artifacts and or creatures you control. Return those cards to the battlefield under your owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So you're going to be able to get that and use all sorts of these nasty creatures with really cool abilities. So maybe the tough cookie comes back, makes another thing. Maybe we've got something like, what else we got here? Shalai and Halar, we've got Kodama, we've got Pia and Halar. Lots of these things have cool end of the battlefield triggers that you can go and get use of. Blink them, maybe you got to get them out from underneath a troublesome, effect, whatever. Lots of cool things you can do. Maybe it's just gives them quasi-vigilance, so you can just block. Good stuff, very useful card, underrated. So, this deck, you may look, has not a single game changer in it. So it would be a bracket 2 deck under the strict definition of the game. I would look at this as being more of a bracket 3 deck personally, because the efficiency of the spells in here are suitable that you're probably going to be able to hang with bigger decks and make them be honest with you. But I also could conceivably play this in a way that it plays really well with a bunch of precons and everybody gets to do something fun because of the group hug effect. So I would presume it's probably more of a bracket 3 list more than a bracket 2, but it's got no game changers in it, so it's just a really cool card. All right, folks, that's the deck today. So that's Rocco, Street Chef. Check the show notes down below to go and see the list. It's from Moxfield. You can go check it out, along with all the other decks that we've previewed here on the show, on the podcast. Sorry, you can find them all on the channel. If you like what you hear, you can find a show each and every week at your favorite podcast app. Also, please like and subscribe down below, because that every little bit helps us get the word out and helps the algorithm. We're going to try and get to 50. We didn't get there quite in the month of April. We're looking to see if we can do it in the month of May. We'd like to get 50 followers on YouTube to help build our following there too. All right. Thanks very much, everybody. Have a good night. We'll talk to you again soon.